Focus on Headline. All right, let's take a look at what major issues are making the headlines today on Focus on Headline. For this, joining us in the studio today, we have our reporters in Che Ji-hee and Yoon Suk Yeol. Guys, welcome back.
Good evening. Happy Hump Day, everyone.
Seems like every time Ji comes here, she's always matching with her counterpart. All white today. All white today. It's interesting.
And gray in the middle.
Gray in the middle. Always neutral. Guys, we're going to talk about the economy, something that we've been looking at for quite a bit for the past several years now. It's been 2 or 3 years that we've been looking carefully at the inflation figures. As you know, the COVID-19 pandemic has done a whole lot to the consumer prices. Well, South Korea's inflation rate rose above the 3% range again in the month of February after falling below the level in the first month of this year. This is mainly attributable to the rise in international oil prices. As you know, South Korea relies heavily on the Dubai crude, which is a bit more expensive than the West Texas Intermediate. And not to mention food prices. We've been talking about this as well. Ji, you're going to start us off. Let's get the latest figures on this.
Sure. So according to data released by Statistics Korea on Wednesday, the country's consumer price index rose 3.1% in February, rebounding from a 6-month low on higher prices of oil and agricultural products. Now, there are expectations added that the Bank of Korea, the country's central bank, will likely keep interest rates in the first half. The inflation rate had remained above 3% between August and December last year before falling to 2.8% in the first month of this year. So the inflation fell for a third straight month to 2.8% in February, which is the lowest since July 2023. And prices of agricultural goods surged 20.9% in February on year, pushing up overall inflation by 0.8 percentage points. While fresh fruit prices surged by 41.2%, which is a record high since September 1991, the fresh food index has also been pushed up by 20%. On the other hand, petroleum prices eased 1.5% in the same month from the previous month's 5% decline amid rising international oil prices. Now, the cost of dining out also went up 3.8%, but it's the smallest gain since October 2021. And living necessities price index, which is composed of items with high purchase frequency, increased 3.7%. And after peaking at 4.5% in October in 2023, the index slowed to 3.4% in January, but expanded again in 4 months. Now, annual core inflation, excluding volatile food and energy factors, stayed at 2.5% in February, which is the lowest since December 2021.
Yes, Haeyoung and I, we've been talking about the grossly expensive fruit prices these days, and it does feel like it's been jumping 41.2%. We talked about how even prices of if you want to eat fruit and you don't have a whole lot of money, there are certain fruits that it's always cheap. Tangerines from Jeju, right? Skyrocketed. Apple, probably the most basic of the fruits out there. Apples are super expensive now because they're saying because of a number of reasons, everything else is expensive. And so now people are seeking out apple. And so when there is a high demand for something, the prices are always going to go up. Chame, which is Korean yellow melons, right? One of probably the more affordable fruits out there. 4 for 15,000 won. Is how they're selling this. That's a figure that I have never seen before, but people are...
So expensive.
It really is.
Fruits are only for kids now. It's official.
It really is. And it should be a special thing nowadays. And it's getting ridiculous here, but that's how it is. I do wonder, though, how the fruit prices in your countries are, if this is only something that we're seeing here in South Korea because of a number of agricultural issues. But do tell us how things are over there. In the meantime, the government has decided to significantly increase the budget for reducing delivery prices and providing discounts for fruits and vegetables in response to the soaring prices that we just talked about here. But it also plans to expand the range of items subject to allocated tariffs. Sam, let's get the latest.
Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs Song Mi-ryung announced during a joint ministerial meeting on price affairs held on this Wednesday that the budget for supporting delivery prices of 13 items, including apples and green onions, which have seen skyrocketing prices, will be increased from 1.5 billion won to 20.4 billion won. She emphasized that these measures will be directly linked to retail prices set by distribution companies. For instance, when supplying apples, green onions, cucumbers, and spinach from the production site or wholesalers to distribution companies, the government will provide support at 1,000 won per kilogram for apples and green onions and 500 won per head of cabbage. These measures come amidst almost shocking price hikes in fruits and vegetables. Following a 56.8% increase in January, apple prices surged by 71% in February, forcing people accustomed to having apples for breakfast to reconsider their healthy habits. Green onions, widely used in Korean cuisine, have also seen a price hike of over 50%, causing distress among many. Minister Song mentioned that agricultural prices have sharply risen last year and early this year due to weather conditions. Unfavorable events such as heavy summer rains and outbreaks of plant diseases during the harvest season have led to reduced production, particularly in fruits and greenhouse vegetables, resulting in sharp price hikes.
Yeah, the greenhouse vegetables and the fruits have seen a significant jump, which we talk about like strawberries, right? Greenhouse fruits. Korean yellow melons are also greenhouse fruits that you can normally buy around this time, although it's mostly enjoyed during the summertime. Claire Hardiker says fruit prices have gone up here too, though some supermarkets are cheaper than others. It's a little bit different over in Australia. I mean, there's massive land over there, and so more farmland available, whereas South Korea, there is limited land, but it's still haven't gone this expensive. In my memory. And even things like green onions, like Seyoung said, currently in my household, we're doing what's called the pateku.
Oh.
We buy a bunch and then
In advance.
we buy it in advance. No, we buy it. And then after we eat the top part, we plant the bottom part and grow it and eat it and grow it and eat it.
They grow fast, right?
They grow fast, but it also stinks up the place.
Smart.
So
It's smart.
That's how expensive it is, ladies and gentlemen. And I am no Rockefeller. The Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs also considering applying maximum discount rate of 40% to all items that have risen in price by more than 30% compared to the previous years. Tell us about this.
Right. In addition to applying a discount rate of up to 40%, the government will also expand overseas supply for fruits and vegetables in short supply using allocated tariffs. For instance, the Korea Agro Fisheries and Food Trade Corporation will directly import orange and bananas to supply them at lower prices while reducing the tariff rate for 500 tons of mandarins from 50% to 10% and for 1,300 tons of durian from 45% to 5%. The tariff rate for pineapple juice will also be reduced from 50% to 10%. Measures to expand supply, including the swift introduction of allocated tariff quota for green onions and dried red peppers, will be implemented concurrently. The Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs has immediately reorganized its supply situation room into an emergency supply stability task force and will hold daily ministerial meetings to review and implement measures. Meanwhile, in a related development, Deputy Prime Minister Choi Sang-mok also emphasized at a joint ministerial meeting on price affairs on the 6th that stabilizing prices of agricultural, livestock, and fishery products is the top priority. He pledged that the government will spare no effort to ensure that inflation stabilizes in the 2% range as soon as possible, taking the recent price situation seriously.
Yeah, the government was treading a bit carefully when it comes to cutting the tariffs for the import agriculture for a number of reasons, because number one of the things that I remember they cited was that if there is a large inflow of agricultures coming from different country, there is also the risk of diseases, agricultural diseases, right? Which is why if you go to airports, if you go to different countries, you're not allowed to bring in any agricultural livestock,
right.
Just for quarantine measures. But they said they're going to be inspecting tighter quarantine measures, tighter inspections on the agricultural goods, but also number two, they were a little bit careful on bringing in a lot of imports because it might basically affect the domestic agricultural prices too much to the point where it'll become a burden for the farmers. So it does seem like they're treading a bit carefully, but I think it is inevitable that they're going to be taking in the imports of these goods here. Korea's combined household and business debt continues to stand at an alarming level, reaching another record high. It seems like every month we talk about an all-time high here. G, let's get the latest on this.
Right. So Korea's household and corporate debt levels have remained dangerously high for the past 14 quarters. Now, this is the longest period since the statistics began in 1972. According to data from the Bank for International Settlements, or BIS, on Saturday, the country's credit gap has been above 10% since the end of the second quarter of 2020 and stood at 10.5 percentage points at the end of the third quarter of last year. Now, the credit gap is a metric used to assess the risk of debt, and it shows how much the ratio of private credit, which includes household and corporate debt, to nominal GDP has deviated from its long-term trend. So if the private credit ratio is increasing faster than its past trend, the gap will widen, and the BIS uses this metric to predict potential national credit crisis. And according to recent reports, Korea's credit gap has been steadily increasing, reaching 12.9 percentage points by the end of the second quarter of 2020. And this exceeds the 10 percentage point warning threshold and is considered a dangerous level. And the gap then reached a record high of 17.4 percentage points at the end of the third quarter of 2021. Now, there is a downward trend at the moment, but it still remains quite high, reaching 16.8 percentage points at the end of the third quarter of 2022. So this still is well above the 10% threshold. Now, there have been only a few instances in the past where the credit gap has crossed the 10 percentage point mark, and they were from the end of the fourth quarter of 1997 until the end of the third quarter during the foreign exchange crisis, and also from the end of the fourth quarter in 2008 until the end of the fourth quarter of 2009. That's during the financial crisis. And it had previously crossed the 10% mark twice in the early 1980s as well, but never for more than a year in a row. And also, out of the 44 countries surveyed by the BIS, only Japan, with 13.5 percentage points, and South Korea had credit caps above 10 percentage points at the end of the third quarter of last year.
Let's go into a topic that everybody has been talking about. There's always kind of like a 5-year interval when there's a bull market going on with the cryptocurrency. It came a little bit earlier this time around. I think it was like, it was supposed to be 4-year intervals, but it came on a third year now. We're talking about cryptocurrency. Bitcoin, of course, the largest cryptocurrency by market cap. Continued its ascent, although it's currently on a correction right now. Bitcoin breached the 69,000 US dollar mark, shooting up to an all-time high. This on Tuesday. Seong, let's talk about Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, the heavyweight of cryptocurrencies, surpassed the 69,000 mark on Tuesday, reaching an all-time high after 2 years and 4 months. As of 10:05 a.m. Eastern Time, the price per Bitcoin recorded $69,115 US, marking a 4.0 to 6% increase from 24 hours ago. But the upward trend didn't last long. Bitcoin soared to the $69,300 range before quickly declining. As of 10:46 a.m. today, it was trading at $67,079 US, up 1.00% from the previous day. As mentioned earlier, Bitcoin carries uncertainty, and looking at its short history, we can say that it's on a roller coaster of ups and downs. For example, it surged by 160% since October and rose by over 40% in just February alone. But during the Terra Luna incident, or when the cryptocurrency exchange FTX went bankrupt, it plummeted to the $16,000 range.
Now, again, a lot of investors might be curious about the cause or the reason for this recent uptrend here. Let's talk about some of the factors contributing to the surge in Bitcoin prices, but also it's affecting some of the other altcoins and other massive, large cryptocurrencies. What are some of the experts saying?
Well, first, experts say the approval of spot Bitcoin exchange-traded funds, or ETFs, by U.S. regulatory authorities and the influx of large-scale funds through them are the reasons behind the sharp increase. Some analysts, in the meantime, attribute the price increase to Bitcoin's halving, which reduces its supply by half. Bitcoin's total supply is limited to 21 million, of which 19 million have already been mined. After halving, the rewards given to miners are reduced by half. And last but not least, the market experts suggest that expectations of a rate cut by the Federal Reserve and the New York Stock Exchange hitting all-time highs, along with the recovery of investment sentiment in risky assets, also contributed to the rise in Bitcoin prices. So we do not know whether the upward trend will continue, but hope you make a wise decision considering different factors.
Yeah, don't listen to people around you who go, now is the time to buy or anything like this. No one can make the right decision except for you yourself. But it's interesting because if you look at the inflation, or is it the interest rates do have a big impact on whether people are putting money into cryptocurrency now. Because if you remember the last bull market some 3 years ago, it was during COVID-19 and when you had near zero interest rates. And so these people who have money, they're not putting into the banks and getting whatever interest rates from this. And so it started off with a lot of people going into the stock market. It started off with the stock market, right? People are putting money into the stock market, and then they realized that this is a done thing. Now we're going to go over to cryptocurrency, and so everyone's betting on Bitcoin because it is the big coin, like you said, is the heavyweight of the cryptocurrency. But all these altcoins are rising as well because when you look at the prices of a single altcoin, when it's like $1 or 1.00 something, I know some weird meme coin popped up recently called the Pepe coin or something like that. People are buying into this because it's more affordable.
Right.
It's easier for the average investors to dip into it, and more people go into it, and they end up, trying to make money. But of course, always tread carefully when it comes to investing in these risky assets. But it's not just Bitcoin that reached an all-time high in the market. So we have the price of gold also closing at a record high since 2014. Gee, let's talk about gold here.
Sure. So according to the Korea Exchange Gold Market, the price of 1 gram of gold ended at 89,110 won, which is 66.78 US dollars at Monday's closing. Now, the figure is a 2.2% increase from the previous trading session, which is also a record high since the National Bourse Operators Gold Market began operating in 2014. Now, such a bullish trend is not limited to South Korea because London's gold price benchmark hit an all-time high as well of $2,083.15 per troy ounce on Monday, renewing the previous record set at the end of last year. And according to market experts, the price of gold is once again strongly correlated with interest rates. So when interest rates are low, the dollar's value weakens, making gold more attractive as an investment. And this has led to an increase in the price of gold as more investors, both in and outside of Korea, anticipate a rate cut in June as well. And so this explains why the value of gold is currently trending upward. And according to a researcher at Daeshin Securities, she has suggested that the recent increase in gold prices indicates that the U.S. Federal Reserve is drawing closer to the end of its cycle of interest rate increases. And this implies that gold prices will likely continue moving in a favorable direction as they have an inverse correlation with real interest rates once again. And the researcher estimated that the upper limit of gold prices in the year's second half could reach $2,150 per troy ounce. And according to another expert in economics from Hana Securities, the increased geopolitical tensions in the Middle East region is one of the drivers of the increased preference for safe assets such as gold as well.
Yeah, not to mention gold is used for everything these days. When they're making semiconductor chips, gold is a very, very good conductor, is what it is. I mean, it's also a good investment asset, but also it's used everywhere. And they say that unlike diamonds, Diamonds that's a big scam. Gold is limited in supply, what they're saying. I mean, maybe there's it's harder to find gold than, let's say, diamond. And so because it's so limited, the price is going to continue to go up, is what they're saying. But it's hard to call it a safe asset when the prices are so volatile these days, to be honest with you. Let's move on to talk about an issue that we've been covering for the past month now. It's been over a week since the trainee doctors have walked out of their workplaces and continued on with their walkout, despite the fact that the government has issued a back-to-work order. With all this, you had Chu Soo-ho, who is the head of the Emergency Response Committee of the Korean Medical Association. He's the chief spokesperson of the KMA's Emergency Response Committee. He's accused of violating medical laws. He appeared before the police on this Wednesday. He is the first of 5 former and current executives of the KMA who have been summoned for questioning with the police. Chu stated that before entering the building today, he had nothing to hide. There was no basis for the allegations, also criticizing the government. Siang, let's get the latest on this.
Well, tensions between the government and the medical community continue to escalate, and the Seoul Metropolitan Police Agency's Public Crime Investigation Division summoned Chu Soo-ho, the chairman of the Korea Medical Association, to the Mapogu office for questioning today, marking the first interrogation of the 5 former and current KMA officials accused by the government. Earlier, the police had imposed travel bans on the accused 5 and demanded their attendance for questioning on this Wednesday and Thursday, which is tomorrow. Chu confidently stated to reporters before entering the building today that he has nothing to hide, no reason to hide, so he came comfortably for his questioning with police. The charges against the former and current officials of the KMA, including Chu, are aiding and abetting junior doctors' collective resignations, arguing that KMA instigated the massive walkouts of trainee doctors, failed to intervene and prevent doctors from collective actions. Regarding this, Chu strongly denied the allegation, stating that younger generation do not simply follow the instruction of seniors, but they rather act as they believe is right. Chairman Chu also went on to say that since the introduction of the current medical insurance system and terribly low medical fee in Korea, today's situation had already been foreseen, once again highlighting fundamental systematic problems that medical circles face. He also urged the government to come to the dialogue table without preconditions. Meanwhile, on this Wednesday, President Yoon Suk Yeol, during the cabinet meeting held in Sejong City, addressed that illegal collective actions that jeopardize the lives of citizens must be strictly dealt with according to the law and principles. So now, with no signs of a breakthrough amid growing risk of major medical disruptions, we will still have to keep a close eye on how the situation will unfold while asking for measures to minimize the damage to patients.
Yeah, so the 5 former and current executives of the KMA, I believe, so he was the first, Chu Soo-ho, the chief spokesperson for the KMA, was the first to be questioned. I believe this Saturday, the former chairman of the KMA, No Hwan-gyu, is going to be questioned. And then next Tuesday, I believe, they're going to be questioning the current chairman of the KMA, Kim Tae-gu. And I believe, and then there's 2 other officials, I believe, that's going to be questioned in the near future. But again, they're really pushing hard on this. The government is pushing hard on this. And unfortunately, it's unlike the truckers' strike that we saw a year and a half ago. It doesn't seem like the doctors are kind of moving away with this because they're going, well, if you guys are going to suspend our licenses, sure, it's terrible, but who's going to be working then? You're still not going to have any doctors. And so the threat is real. The longer this goes, the more the people of Korea are going to be victims of this collective action. So we'll continue to keep a close tab on this. In the meantime, U.S. Senior official for North Korea, Chung Bak, on Tuesday pointed out the need for the interim steps to be taken on a gradual path towards North Korea's ultimate denuclearization. She stated that it's Washington's goal to pursue stability on the Korean Peninsula. Chi, let's get more on this.
Sure. So U.S. officials, including senior official for North Korea Chung Bak and Mira Rapp-Hooper, NSC Senior Director for East Asia and Oceania, have recently suggested the need for interim steps towards denuclearizing rising the Korean peninsula. Now, this marks a subtle shift in U.S. policy towards North Korea aimed at engaging Pyongyang in serious and sustained diplomacy. And the officials acknowledge the complexity of achieving complete denuclearization and the possibility of a strategic realignment involving North Korea's nuclear ambitions, as well as its growing ties with Russia and China. So Jung Bak highlighted the broad scope of the weapons programs in North Korea, which includes the creation of solid fuel ballistic missiles and hypersonic capabilities. And this underscores the fact that denuclearization will not happen overnight. And so the idea of taking interim steps, which could include stopping nuclear weapons development in exchange for sanctions relief, is a significant shift from the previous strategy of the all or nothing strategy. And the revised U.S. strategy considers the broader geopolitical landscape, including, once again, North Korea's alignment with Russia and China. And Park's insights suggest that the U.S. believes North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is pursuing a long-term strategic shift to maintain his regime through alliances that may take advantage of divisions among its enemies. And the U.S. is urging China to play a constructive role, indicating a multifaceted approach to regional security that goes beyond just denuclearization and includes broader discussions on peace and stability in East Asia. So the U.S. is using interim steps as a tactical maneuver to potentially improve relations with Pyongyang. And while the ultimate goal is complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula, the U.S. is really willing to consider alternative options that can really reduce the risk of conflict and encourage North Korea's return to negotiations and ultimately establish a lasting peace in the region.
Yeah, I think there was like a number of pundits who are kind of translating this whole interim step, or some have used the intermediate step that was used by a rap hooper. Some optimists, like you said, could be, this could be United States basically going, well, we've never said they have never said they're going to go sanctions first. And that was probably one of the main reasons for why the Hanoi summit was a failure. No deal, Hanoi summit, right? Because I believe Kim Jong-un said, listen, we need sanctions relief, and then we'll, we will stop developing nuclear weapons. But they said, no, we want to see, because you guys tricked us before. We've had this deal before, and you guys didn't, follow with our promise, so we can't trust you, and that fell through. But this is the only way. We've been saying this for years now. Probably the only way to get North Korea to kind of start taking actions is if you give them sanctions relief. But again, this whole terminology, interim step, intermediate step, it's very, very ambiguous. We just know that they're going to go from A to B, but now there's A1 or B, A1 in the middle here. But that could also be them going, well, the interim step or the intermediate step is dialogue, which the U.S. has been calling for years now, right? That they're willing to talk with North Korea without any preconditions was what they say every time they say this, and it's never worked. And so we're hoping it's the other one, that the U.S. may be going sanctions first. I don't know how well that's going to go with the Republicans, to be honest with you, but there's no other options right now. And nothing has worked. Nothing has worked with North Korea. Maybe sanctions relief, but there's always a snapback, right? Snapback being if they, again, break the promises, boom, put the sanctions back in place. So I don't know what's going to happen. We're hoping it's just the better of the interim steps there.
I think it's just the U.S. stepping back. And it's also giving in to North Korea.
It's their way of stepping back and giving in without sounding like they're stepping back and giving in. Because,
interim.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything should be based on trust, but there's no trust between the two parties, so that's the problem.
Yeah, but you have to understand the U.S. side. North Korea has kind of not kept their promise on multiple occasions in the past, and so that's probably why. In the meantime, the ongoing observation of North Korea's Yongbyon nuclear facility, right? The International Atomic Energy Agency, or the IAEA, announced on Tuesday that the experimental light water reactor is still undergoing testing. Let's get more on this.
Well, it's been a while since the IAEA has made an appearance in the news following its decision to give a green light to Japan's discharge of contaminated water. Rafael Grossi, the Director General of the IAEA, stated during the regular board meeting held in Vienna, Austria on Tuesday that the discharge of warm water used as coolant in the light water reactor at Yongbyon has been observed. Grossi said IAEA observed the North releasing warm water, as he noted in a December statement on North Korea's nuclear program development, consistent with the commissioning of LWR. The IAEA chief said after a statement in December that the agency continued to observe a strong outflow of water from LWR's cooling system. The light water reactor, or LWR, within the Yongbyon nuclear facility has attracted attention due to suspicions that North Korea aims to increase its production of nuclear material for warhead manufacturing. The IAEA also mentioned the Punggye-ri nuclear test site in Gyeongju County, North Hamgyeongbuk-do province, and assessed that North Korea appears to be preparing for a new nuclear test. And Director General Grossi also emphasized that the operation of the Yongbyon nuclear facility and North Korea's nuclear program is a clear violation of the resolutions of the UNSC.
It's always confusing reading Yongbyon when it's written the North Korean way, hence my stuttering a bit there. Do apologize for that. Let's talk about what's going on over in the U.S. or what's been done already. It is Wednesday now over in the United States, so big night for the incumbent president, Joe Biden, and former president, and now it seems like the clear-cut Republican presidential candidate in Donald Trump. They dominated Super Tuesday across the United States with notable victories in California and Texas. These are two of the most populous U.S. states. Chi, let's get more on Super Tuesday.
Sure. So on Super Tuesday, both President Biden and former President Donald Trump won significant delegate hauls in California, Texas, and other states, bringing them closer to securing their party's nominations for the November presidential election. However, Nikki Haley, Trump's main opponent during the primaries and the former governor of South Carolina, managed to secure Vermont, as reported by the Associated Press. But despite this single defeat, Trump won 12 states by just after 11 p.m. Eastern Time, making a significant achievement towards the nomination. However, a winner for the Republican candidates in Utah and Alaska has yet to be declared. And on the Democratic side, President Biden won all 15 states that held Democratic contests, as well as the Iowa caucuses. However, he faced a minor setback in American Samoa, which is a small American territory in the Pacific Ocean, where he tied with a relatively unknown businessman named Jason Palmer for the territory's delegates. Both of them received 3 delegates each. And in a statement, Biden shifted his focus toward the general election and declared that his message to the nation is centered around the idea that every generation of Americans will eventually face a moment when it's required to defend democracy. So he urged people to stand up for their freedom, the right to vote, and civil rights. Now, the primary elections taking place on Tuesday are crucial in determining the presidential candidates for the November election, and the outcome of these elections will also impact Congress and state houses for the upcoming year and beyond. Now, although there's less suspense this year during this day, the results of Tuesday's elections will likely intensify the competition between Biden and Trump as they approach the general election in November.
Yeah, the thing is, come November, I think everyone knew that it was going to be Biden and Trump. The only kicker here was that there was that small chance that if the Supreme Court upholds Colorado Supreme Court's ruling that Trump cannot be on the ballot because of his role in the insurrection, January 6th insurrection charges that he was facing, that he was going to be out, or if there were amongst many of the Democratic voters who thought maybe Biden is getting a little bit old and he's not fit to run for a presidency, that maybe someone else would be voted, but it's not. It's usually the incumbent. But the thing is, the incumbent president hasn't been this old in years now. I think the last time we've seen something like this was like what was it, like when Roosevelt? I think Roosevelt died in his fourth term, I believe, later on. But nevertheless, we're going to see a Biden-Trump November clash here. Speaking of clashes, we're going to talk about the ongoing conflict over in Gaza. Talks aimed at achieving a ceasefire over in the region was held over in Cairo. It concluded after 3 days without any progress, and seems to be little hope for a cessation of hostilities. Seung, wrap us up here. Let's talk more about the situation there.
Sure. The United States and Qatar, acting as mediators, are urging Israel and Hamas to accept negotiation proposals, but both parties show no signs of willingness to engage in talks. Senior Hamas official Bassem Naim stated to Reuters that during the negotiation period, they presented a ceasefire proposal to the mediator and are awaiting a response from Israel. However, Netanyahu is unwilling to agree, and the ball is now in the court of the United States, which is urged to pressure Netanyahu into reaching an agreement. Well, Hamas' response is not much different. Hamas spokesperson Sami Abu Juri stated that the exchange of Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners would only be possible after a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. But preconditions such as a permanent ceasefire and disarmament have been firmly rejected by Israel. And some voices expressed hope for a ceasefire agreement before the upcoming Islamic fasting month of Ramadan, which begins around the 10th of the next month. But due to uncompromising preconditions, the prospects for negotiations on both sides are becoming uncertain.
Yeah, so right now it seems like Hamas wants a permanent ceasefire. All right, I mean, this is what they want, but I don't know what a permanent ceasefire is really good. Then what's the whole point of what they did last year, right, on October 6th and things like that? But Israel is also going. The point of all this and the reason why we continue to fight is to get rid of Hamas. And if we have a few more months, we can completely eliminate Hamas, is what they're saying. They say they're going to win this war. But also, if you look at it in the international community's view, that also means more civilians, more Palestinians being killed. And now we're getting reports of Palestinian children who are dying due to malnutrition because there's unable to get enough aid flowing in there. And it's winter over there. A lot of obstacles at hand, and everything looks very, very bleak, unfortunately. Guys, thank you very much for your reports today. Have a safe one, and we'll see you guys again.
Thank you.
You can listen to Korea Now with me, SJ Lee, by downloading the Arirang radio application, or tune in online by visiting www.arirangradio.com. So make sure you tune in Mondays through Fridays, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Korea time.